Hello, ladies. It's so good to see you again.
Good to see
Hello.
you.
All right, we're going to start off this episode with one recommendation that is making your mom life better right now. Who wants to go first, Jess?
I will go first because I can't believe I just did this, but I just downloaded Bark, the parental monitoring software.
No, I haven't heard of Bark.
Okay, this thing is like blowing my mind. So it has all these like really great reviews. I actually got it from a guy that I follow on Instagram. Actually, he was in your conference.
Oh, Chris.
Protect Young Eyes.
Yes, Chris McKenna.
Yeah. So he recommended like a couple different ones, and I looked at some of his, and this was one of the ones that he had mentioned. And so I looked into it, and anyway, it basically scours all of your kids' devices, their iPhones, their Gmail, their social media feeds, what they watch on YouTube, so that you don't have to like be a helicopter hover parent, and you can set the levels of severity that you want brought to your attention. So
That's
for my
awesome.
daughter who's 13, I don't really care if there's a little bit of profanity in her text message with her friends. I'm like, please,
Right.
I don't care. Because I can't control everybody's potty mouths, right? But if it's severe or it's extreme or it has a violent or bullying edge to it, then it flags it for me and then I can read the thread.
That's
So
awesome.
it's been amazing. Like in 2 days, it flagged or it read through over like 25,000 things on both of my kids' devices.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it flagged like on my daughter's, it flagged like 200 things. I was like, oh, I got to change the settings on this. I was like, I can't read through 200 things, but it is highly, highly recommend it.
So you actually install
highlighting
it
some
on
things.
their phones?
Yep. So you
Okay.
install it on their phones, and then you install the parental control aspect of it on your device and on your computer. And then you can review all of the things that it flags. And it really just allows you to have a conversation. It's not like, it doesn't like shut their phone off or, anything like
Yeah.
that. But you can just look at it and then be like, do I need to have a conversation about this? So it just gives you more ideas of what their friends are doing, what they're doing. Are they contributing to some of these conversations? Are they not? That kind of stuff. So I love it.
Yeah.
It's been
I think
great.
that's amazing. I love that idea.
I saw on Instagram once and I decided to do it. It was kind of funny. If you go into your kid's phone and, there's like, when you do quick keys or you type things and you can get it to like say just left, you could do JL and it'll make it go to say just left.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So like if I'm texting with my husband, I can just do that and then he can read the full sentence. So
Wow.
I
Right.
changed words so that if she were to curse, like for the S word, I changed it. So if she typed that word, it would say poop.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
And then I picked a couple other words that I know that those girls in that group use.
Yeah.
And I changed them to say like really funny things.
Oh,
like
I love that.
your mama or something. And I was like,
best ever. I'm doing that.
Yes.
I'm doing that.
Yeah. So then when she tries to participate in the conversation, she's like,
Right.
what is going on?
She's like, oh, poop.
That's just, what did she do about that?
She's my one that's so sly. Like I was like, so we had RPAC for a really long time and it was working. It basically takes off. It like shuts down certain apps at certain times a day. And so we were paying the $4.99 a month and it was working, but she figured out how to get around it. And she's so sly. Like, what are you talking about? I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I ended up canceling RPAC. Like, it's not going to do me any good. Like she's, and then I just changed my settings on Netflix and I did everything Chris McKenna said to do. And she somehow figured out how to change her settings in her profile.
Wow.
And you supposedly can only do that on the left. I don't even know. So
Now, how do you deal with that? Does she get in trouble for that? That would be like something I'd be upset about.
Great question, Elise. Done.
I'm using it more as a teachable moment. Like I think it depends on the personality of your teen.
Yeah.
And I'm cautiously letting her know that I'm aware of what she's doing. And there's reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, so my son is like, all right, whatever. Like he's more likely to, I don't know, watch it on somebody else's device or go upstairs and watch it on the upstairs TV. because it's on the downstairs TV that they watch whatever they want. And it's not anything horrific. Like I haven't come across anything that's like really needs a
Yeah.
good talking about.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't need to watch Squid Games. Like there's no reason to, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like just these little things that I'm trying to control. Yeah. So I don't really have, it's like one of those things where I haven't really caught them doing it. I just know that somehow, unexplainably, these things have changed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
I haven't caught her
Yeah.
changing her settings on our pack. I just know that mysteriously this one thing is toggled and I didn't toggle it. And then she's really good at making me question myself. So I'm treading lightly and praying for the Holy Spirit to lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
You're like-
say.
You're going to be an incredible lawyer or
Yes.
maybe a detective because
Yes.
your brain thinks that
Yes.
way.
Or an engineer. I mean,
Or that.
she's like figuring out ways around.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. So that's part of the issue. I'm learning with her to be very strategic and let like the Holy Spirit show me how to present things when the
Yeah.
time is right.
Yeah.
Smart
So-
mama.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Elise, tell me something that's helping your life right now.
Well, I guess, I am really not into cooking, and I did it a lot, but I really lost my steam towards the end. So towards the end of when my kids were all home. So I really like to batch cook. I like to take a weekend, especially in the fall, for winter meals that are easy to like just pull out of the freezer, soups and stews, and just go to town for a whole weekend with a vat of chili and, again, different stews, broccoli cheddar soup, and just batch it.
It's good.
Put it in small containers that we can use easily, pull it out whenever we're hungry. And it just has made my life so much easier. Plus I choose things that I like. And so it's tasty food as well. And I think it's, great to do for your family as well.
Mhm. That's definitely a whole episode. I don't batch prep much, but when I do, I'm so thankful.
And I remember you used to have people over to do that.
Mhm. We'll do that once or twice a year. We'll do like slow cooker meals. We'll do like 10 slow
Love
cooker
that.
meals and just prep them all, stick them in our freezer. And then we just throughout soccer season, pull them out.
So smart. I love it.
So good.
So I don't know if this is making my mom life easier, but it's definitely helping me as a mom. I have one of those cups, coffee cups or mugs, because I don't drink coffee, that you charge, and it keeps your liquid drink hot for about an hour and a half, which is
Nice.
huge. That'll take me through my morning routine, my devotional time, getting interrupted, taking somebody where I didn't think I had to take them,
Oh,
like
glory.
all of that stuff. So that by the time I'm done with all of that, I can come home and my drink is still hot and waiting.
Oh,
for
that's
me.
nice. I like that.
Which brand did you get, Kim? Do you mind sharing or do you know?
Yes, let me tell you, I have a little app on my phone, Ember.
Wow. Ember.
I can,
'cause
like,
not
click
all
it and-
brands are created equal.
Yeah, and I can see at any given time, like what the temperature of my mug is, and I can turn it up or down.
Whoa.
Because I think tea is at a different temperature than coffee. I don't know.
Cool.
I like
Dude,
it.
that's
I love it.
fancy.
My little splurge.
I love it.
Awesome.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about kids and experiencing disappointment and why it is important for them to experience disappointment. I think that we can all say that probably this last year and a half has been a huge disappointment
Yes.
for our
Yeah.
kids in so many ways and
Yes.
in so many different, no matter what age, we've missed out on a lot of things. And
Yes.
put the pandemic aside, there's still disappointments that our kids are going to face up and down. And I have been finding that I made it a priority in my house because I was seeing that my kids weren't handling disappointment well. And I was beginning to worry that it was really going to be a pattern and that this was eventually going to be not great for them, right? As they get older. And so I started to really take a deep dive into what does it mean to be disappointed, and then how do we walk them through it? So that's what I'd love to talk about. I'd love to get some tips and tricks and some input from you guys so that we can help our kids go through this better.
Yeah. Sounds good.
I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about just like well, my family's going through some major disappointment. We just lost my father-in-law. So like we're grief and disappointment and frustration, lots of things. But I was sharing, you know, we have a lot of tools to cope with this. Our, you know, our faith, our family, our friends, like even just having an awareness of mental health concerns, like all that kind of thing. But this friend of mine was like, you know, Jess, not everybody does. And that's why our counselors
Mhm.
are literally overworked. I couldn't get into an appointment until the new year. And it's like we need the mental grit and the foundational tools to face the unexpected, to face the disappointing, you know, and how do we continue to have like a positive outlook, you know, in these circumstances. So I think this is such a critical conversation. So I'm really thankful that we get to have this today, and I'm sure I'm going to learn some stuff. So at least
Mhm.
tell us.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, Jess, too, because I have talked to people and they too have tried to get some mental health support, and
Mhm.
it's just not available right now, which is
Right.
a real indicator.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
telling.
of our resilience as a culture. It's pretty interesting. It has
Yep.
been, of course, unprecedented.
Oh
Um,
my gosh, you said the word.
I know,
Well,
but
it has and it hasn't. It has in our lifetime,
so
but
that's
it
what I
Yeah.
mean.
hasn't. Yeah, when you were if you look at the overall history. I mean, I
And
read that
even
and that gave me a little bit perspective because I needed a
Oh,
little
no,
bit of
no,
perspective.
Yeah.
absolutely true. It's not unheard of. It's just, we have not experienced
Mhm.
it. And, I'm thinking today is Veterans Day. And I thought about that too. Like, we have not been through a war like those people have. And
Mhm.
that impacts your resilience
Yeah.
and
Oh
your
yeah.
ability to be disappointed, to be feel low or whatever your reaction is. So yeah, interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very good.
All right. So what are some of well, what are some of the reasons that it's important for our kids to experience disappointment?
Well, Kim, what do
Well,
you think? I mean, your kids have navigated some pretty significant disappointments in the last couple of years. Like why is it
Yeah.
so important to you, and why are we having the conversation? I'd love to hear.
Yes. All right. One of the reasons why I think it's so important that kids experience disappointment is because it really does mimic real life. We can't shield them from disappointment. There's a lot of things
Mhm.
that I do with my kids, and I've had people ask me, like, how did you know to do that? And it wasn't that I had some big ideas as much as I wanted to replicate what the real world was like in my home. And so the things
Mm.
that I did with my kids, I chose to take whatever it is that you experience in the workplace or whatever you experience in adulthood, and then bring it down to something that's like their level so they can
Mm.
understand what it is.
Like manageable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course I want to like swoop in and make everything better for them. Of course I want to smooth things over or make sure they get the best spot in X, Y, and Z. But I can't do that. And there are going to be disappointments. One thing that comes to mind as I'm saying this, my daughter, when she went from sixth grade to seventh grade, did not get into advanced math.
Hmm.
And I know this is like, well, what's the big deal? It's just math. And it was not because she wasn't capable of it. It was because she didn't do the homework. She was like, I just, didn't never wanted to do the homework. And we've really fought. Like we tried to waive her in. We did a few different things. And we even reached out to someone who was like on the board of ed, because we're like, give us the scoop on like how to like handle this situation. Because we're really disappointed. And our daughters were friends and they were on par academically. And we just wanted to get her feedback. And she was like, it's okay for your daughter to deal with disappointment. It's okay for her to not
Wow.
be in the class she wants to be in. And now what is she going
Yeah.
to do about it? Now what is she going to do about it?
So smart.
And the years that followed, she ended up taking geometry the summer between her
Mm,
freshman and her sophomore year
yeah.
so she could catch up to where she wanted to be, which would prepare her for, the SAT in time and would do all the things that she wanted to do. And she did the work. Like she
Yeah.
suffered the consequences of where she found herself. She realized she was disappointed. She realized she had gotten there herself. And
Mm.
she did the work. I mean, she did a whole year's worth of geometry in 6 weeks.
Mm,
And
Yeah.
she now has the skill. She knows what it takes to get up in the morning, spend 2 hours working and then have your whole day to yourself, to do whatever you want in the summer. And so we
Yeah.
created, so there's so many skills that she got out of that experience. And then she ended up taking like AP Physics 1 and 2, AP Calculus, like
Wow.
it was ridiculous. Of course she was capable, but she had to
Yeah.
go through this disappointment
Yeah.
to get that
Like it just
fire
wasn't,
underneath
it wasn't
her.
handed to her, right? It wasn't handed to her.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I would say is that, teaching our children to, go through disappointment is also a way of helping them manage expectations, right?
Mhm.
You learn to set appropriate expectations for life and the world. And, it also helps you not set expectations, especially out of line for other people. People are going to disappoint you left, right, and center. They just are.
Mhm.
And we know we're married, our spouses have disappointed us, our kids disappoint everybody.
Mhm.
And so it gives them this like ability to remain in love, still servant hearted, still like going through the motions with the family and manage their expectations for other people, and I think that that's one of the biggest keys, because when we set appropriate expectations for others, then we're far less likely to be disappointed by them.
Mm.
Offense goes down, right? They're just like, oh, I just never expected them to do anything like that, or do something nice for me or whatever. Like when we set those expectations, like, oh, my husband's, it's our 10th anniversary, like he's gonna go all out and take me to Paris, and then you go like camping in Colorado, you're like, oh, just don't do that to yourself.
Yeah. That's
So yeah,
such
that's
good
one of the things I love
practice.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think like when I think about my daughter's story, it definitely helped her to build problem solving skills.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
she was
And
able
it,
to solve this. Like and it
Yeah.
wasn't because we were so righteous and we wanted it to be a teachable moment. We wanted so bad for it not to be a teachable moment. We wanted so bad to like get her in the class she needed to be in, and it just didn't work out.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really empowering to be disappointed or not get what you think you deserve. I mean, she admitted in your example that
Mhm.
she wasn't putting the work in. And you guys would have liked to have compensated for that by using whatever, we want to do that for our kids.
Mhm.
But she learns nothing from doing that. And
Yeah.
instead, she really learned how to do the work. And that's empowering when you find out that like, oh, okay. So yeah, I didn't do the thing that I needed to do. Now I have, and A equals B, or A plus B equals C. I did it. And now I get the reward of putting in the
Mhm.
hard work. I think that's wonderful. My kids were in a lot of theater stuff, and there was a lot of competitiveness and a lot of,
Mhm.
and there was certainly unfairness, like literally somebody was really connected to the director, whatever. But mostly there was a lot of, it's hard. You put yourself out on the line and you don't get the part. And I think, again, it wasn't easy, but I think it was good for all of my kids because they have some tenacity that I don't have. They're kind of not afraid to try something that they're going to fail at, that there's only certain slots open. I remember my daughter, I know it stung when she wouldn't get a part, but I remember Farrell saying, my hair color wasn't right. My body type wasn't right. Like, instead of making it all about, oh gosh, I'm so disappointed, I didn't get the part. It was like, there's practical reasons. I did the best that I could. I'm not gonna.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think it really
I'm not going to lose
manages.
sleep over it, right?
Yeah, it manages emotional response. It really teaches lessons about, what you get when you work really hard. And sometimes it doesn't always work out that way either, by the way. And sometimes
Yeah.
they learn life isn't always fair. And that's
Mhm.
not a fun
Oh,
lesson, but it's the truth.
no.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. So Kim, you were saying earlier, because you have a child in college now.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was you that said this or someone else, but they were saying, college kids are having an epically hard time in their first semesters. And
Yes.
it's like when we coddle these kids and
Mhm.
we swap a disappointment for a treat, for, oh, let me take you shopping or whatever. We
Yeah.
try to cover the wound and we don't just
Yeah.
let them sit in the disappointment. Then all of a sudden they're thrown to the world and disappointment is everywhere. And these
True.
kids are slipping into
Yeah.
epically high levels of apathy and depression and all this stuff. It's like we haven't actually given them the tools to cope with just regular life.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
And also, I think about just some of what you're talking about. Like, I've heard so many parents say things about like the college dorm and that, oh,
Mhm.
it's so small. It's so tough. And I'm like, it's college.
What?
Like, they're kids. They don't
Yeah.
they don't need an apartment. They just need to,
Yeah.
like, actually a room makes navigating all the rest of the stuff a
Yeah.
little simpler. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not, I definitely, of course, I didn't want my kids to go through difficult things and I didn't
Yeah.
like watching them go through it. I'm certain that there were times when I hate to say it, but I think I sort of went from one extreme to the next. In some cases, I just absolutely would do anything I could to help them avoid that pitfall.
Yeah.
But then in other situations, I was like, I gotta just let this go and let them go through whatever
Yeah.
they need to go
Yeah.
through. Whatever the failure might be. Or
Yeah.
I remember, Kimberly, what you're talking about with school. When one daughter really felt it was unfair she had gotten a grade in English and she just felt like the teacher just didn't know her and didn't wasn't honoring her work. And
Mm.
she went and talked to her, which was so hard for her. I mean, I think it practically made her sick. Like kids do not like to talk to their teachers about this stuff, but she
Right.
went and the teacher like inched up the grade by like 2 points. It wasn't even a grade difference. And it was so disappointing, but it was like,
Yeah.
you did what you were supposed to do
That's right.
and you couldn't move the needle, but you need to take pride in the fact that you did it. You did something that was hard for you and it didn't even reap the results, but still you did it. So it's kind of the opposite of disappointment. But I mean, she was disappointed,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have a question. I have a question for the group because Alex and I massively disappointed our children. This was just before COVID. And so, backstory, both of my kids were competitive gymnasts, very good, like doing incredibly well, like winning, right? Like they're going to these competitions and they're either middle or top of the food chain in lots of these competitions. And so they leveled up again and it's like, okay, more money, more time,
Mhm.
more, all the things. And so Alex and I had a conversation and we were like, babe, this is like college money, this is send them to university kind of level here.
Yeah.
Mm,
And so we had a conversation with the kids and we said, listen, this is all the money that mom and dad are willing to spend on entertainment or recreation of any variety in the whole year.
Mhm.
And so you guys can make a choice. And this is probably where we went wrong, but we said, you make a choice. Either it's gymnastics, and then literally we told them no birthday parties, no impromptu like holidays, no vacation with the family. Like it's gymnastics. That's it.
Mhm.
wow.
And we said, so you make the choice whether or not you want to do that and stay with gym or try a new sport. And like, we'll still be able to do all the things that we love as a family. Both of them chose gymnastics.
Wow.
And so we said, okay. And we moved forward. And literally, I'm not kidding you, the next week, half of my son's team, so all the boys that he had been literally competing with for several years now, half of them went to another gym, just up and left.
Mm.
And there were only like now there was like 3 boys total on his team. And that was one of the main reasons that we were even considering keeping him in gymnastics, was that it was such a camaraderie, whatever.
Yes.
And then my daughter injured herself so brutally
Oh,
2 days after the thing happened with my son
Wow.
that she could no longer compete and she had to go into physical therapy for her back.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, so then, I'm like, that's it. That was a prompting from the Holy Spirit. We're pulling them out of gym. They're trying something new. Like, that's it. So we did that. And I mean, we prayed about it before. We really felt like God was saying, you need to pull them out of this competitive
Mhm.
gymnastics world and like do something else. To this day, my kids still sort of longingly think about and consider that one of their greatest disappointments in life. And I still don't know how to help them. So
Mm.
please, there's my story.
So when you say that was one of their greatest disappointments in life, what do you mean, them leaving gymnastics?
Yeah, us pulling them from competitive gymnastics
Okay.
for sure.
Wow, that's tough. That is
Yeah.
tough. I think
I mean,
about
my
all the,
my daughter's physical therapist, when we went to go to the orthopedic surgeon, he said, how long have you been doing gym? And we told him, and he goes, oh yeah, that's about the career of an average gymnast. He goes, you wouldn't have too many years left before you'd have to have cortisone shots like every week. And I'm thinking, what? Yeah. So
that's
for
tough.
me, I'm like, I made the right mama decision. Are you not
Yeah.
hearing him? Did you hear what he
Yeah.
said?
Yeah.
And what do they say
But
about that?
I mean,
Doesn't really,
no,
doesn't
I
really.
think it's like, as a kid, you think you're invincible. Like
Yeah.
nothing can ever go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't
And if it does,
matter.
you'll get better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's a really tough one, Jess. I mean, we definitely had a lot of conversations over spending a lot of money on,
Sports.
soccer and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And we didn't really have the conversations with our children much. We had them with each other. But I don't know. That is really tough. And
Yeah.
gymnastics is so specific. But I also know, because we did have kids dabbling in it for a while in one of those fabulous gymnastica places. Did you ever do that, Kimberly?
We did little gym. We didn't take it very far.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, my daughter Katie, like whatever she did, she always wanted to really level up with everything. So we did
Yeah.
some of this gymnastica. And of course, there was some promise there. But she got out of it early enough that it didn't start to mushroom in terms of the price. I
Right.
don't know. I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah. And I think it's going to take time for them to see the big picture.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
we
that's good.
continue to pray that God shows them something better that he has in store for them. Oftentimes,
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is cliche, I find that it's been true in my life, is that a no to something is often a yes for something else.
Yes.
Yeah.
For a different direction that he wants to take us. And, I don't have this on here as the list of things to talk about, but, there may be a process and a time when they're going to have to deal with forgiveness. They're going to have to choose to
Yeah.
forgive you guys for this. And not because you guys were evil or wrong or did anything, but that, here's another reason why the kids should experience disappointment. They need to understand the process of forgiveness and understand, am I blaming everybody for
Yeah.
everything, or am I willing to lay it at Jesus's feet?
Yeah.
God may use that for them to be incredible coaches in the future. Like, we don't know what he has for them
Right.
in that. But I think there's a certain amount of trust we have to have, especially if that you prayed about it. And I do think that, look, we've all been in situations where we look back and we see God's sovereignty, and it was not what we would have picked. And we look back and we're like, thank God I didn't marry that guy. Right. So there's always,
gosh, yes. Yes. And
there's
every woman
always,
said amen.
True.
Yeah. And I think experiences like this, disappointment, allows you to practice having big emotions. You brought up emotions earlier. I mean, I know people in my life that are so not in touch with their emotions, and and if things would be different if they didn't spend their life having someone else solve their problems or buffering and putting a Band-Aid on those feelings, but rather practice experiencing them, practice the, embrace the grief, embrace the disappointment, embrace the sadness, and just say it's okay to be sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was one of the things I was thinking about, Kimberly, when you shared with us some of what we were going to be talking about. I think it's like sometimes we don't as parents want our children to have all those feelings, to have
Yeah.
all the negative feelings. We want to protect them from disappointment, or we don't even want to. Sometimes for me, I'm going to be honest, I just didn't want to hear it. But I think there
Yeah.
were times where I really needed, because I guess it impacted me, and it made me sad, and I didn't want, codependent sadness coming over on me. But when I think about it, and it's something that I feel like I'm even working with now, about just saying to somebody, well, how do you feel? Like, identify the feeling. It's okay to
Yeah.
feel that way. Like,
I
especially
love
just
that.
when I think about well, you're both families are going through grief of
Yeah.
losing
Grandfather.
people, in your case, your father, and just your father-in-law. And like that huge loss with lots of feelings involved. And
Yeah.
it's really an opportunity to help your kids feel their feelings instead of
Yeah.
trying to get rid of them. I mean, this is a
Ugh.
legitimate, painful part of life.
Yeah.
And
Ugh.
yeah,
Yes, Elise. Just keep
Yes.
talking.
and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. And that
I think
resiliency
go ahead.
they'll need later on in life.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And I love, like, you kind of touched on it as well, not to segue, but it's kind of like, how do we help our kids in these circumstances? And at least you made a really good point. It's like, get to the root of the emotion, like, be empathetic, like, come alongside. And that is what we are doing right now. And what we even did with the whole gymnastics thing. It was kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, I would feel upset and angry if it were me as well. Like,
Yes.
I understand that what is
Validate.
happening to you is not your favorite,
Yeah.
is not what you would necessarily even choose for yourself. And I would apologize for that, like, especially with the gymnastics thing, not with the grief thing. I'm like, I had nothing to do with that.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
But saying I'm sorry, saying, I'm really sorry, but mom and dad we are trying to make the best decision for you, the healthiest choice for you
Yeah.
right now. And well, like you said, Kim, while they may not understand it at the time, I do believe, as we sit with these things, as we come alongside our kids and say, I see that you're hurting, and that's okay. I'm sorry, I can't take the hurt away right
Yeah.
now,
Mhm.
and I don't know, it's like, even saying to them, like, how can I help you, to a certain degree, it's like, I don't know. Do we say that? Do we say that to our kids? Like, how can I help you? And they say, buy me a new car. I don't know. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
they
I
might
don't
say, buy
know.
me ice cream. And maybe that is exactly what they need
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Can we
think
go get ice cream?
I think it's okay to say, is there anything that I can do for you? Is there any, because again, it's not like we want them to be in pain, but there is pain in life.
Yeah.
And so if there's something that we can do to help them have the feeling and also alleviate it to
Yeah.
some degree, that's okay.
Yeah.
We can't, that's not taking it away from them. But
So
yeah.
So
we're not,
practically speaking, like, I want to know, like, what are the things that we can do as parents without enabling them? Because we already established, like, we don't want to enable or coddle or protect them so much that they can't cope.
Right.
Like, what do we do to help them get through it to a positive place?
Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned empathy already. And for me, empathy doesn't come naturally in our home from either me or my husband. And it was definitely not the culture of either of our homes growing up. And we're starting to explore that now. I mean, I knew that growing up. I mean, it just wasn't. Nobody wanted to deal with the big emotions. It was very much like,
Wow.
like when the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college, my boyfriend died in a car accident. And
gosh.
we were weeks afterwards, because I hadn't gone back to college yet. And my dad was like, are you over this already yet? Like, it's been weeks,
sheesh.
like because he didn't know what to do for me. And so he's like, it's been weeks already. Like, are we still on this? Like,
oh my God.
Like, I mean, that was like, feelings were bad, pulling up your bootstraps was good. And that's what was rewarded. And so,
Wow.
I'm really trying to I'm trying to be more empathetic. At least you've taught me how to do that by just being a friend. I have other friends who are so good at it. And just letting somebody, not trying to talk our kids out of how they're feeling. For me, like with teenagers, I do a lot of saying, that sucks. It does.
Wow.
Like, because I don't know what
Yeah.
else to say. And because I think some of the statements that I read that I'm supposed to say, I just can't bring myself to say them. I can't bring myself to be like, I know you're really hurting right now. Like, it's easier for me to go in the room, plop down on their couch and go, this sucks. And they're like, yeah, and then we just sit there,
Yeah. Yeah.
Variety of empathy. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. I can imagine going to my kids in the way that you just exemplified and saying, I know talking it through in a certain way is just not, it just seems disingenuous. It just doesn't, you just got to get sometimes raw and nitty gritty and on their level about what this really feels like. Or it's just, you're right. It's not fair. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think sometimes what we have to be careful of, I'm speaking to myself here about boundaries and, the enabling stuff that you were talking about, Jess, too, is over emoting for their disappointments. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but I have done that so that there wasn't really space for them to have their feelings. I had such strong feelings.
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
Yeah. If there was an injustice committed against my children,
come on, Elise.
And
Mama Bear took over in every way.
Yeah, and they were really hurt. I would like, and they would literally be like, Mom, step back. Like,
Wow.
and I can, even as they're older, I have to listen for those cues because I have strong emotions. I do. And so, yeah, I think that's important too, like balancing, letting them coming alongside them, having empathy, and also letting them have the feeling instead of sort of taking it over.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think another,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to this, like as a life coach, I've learned the skill of asking questions.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning to ask my kids questions, like coach them through questions. So for example, when my daughter didn't make the squad for lacrosse that she wanted to, I let her have her emotions. But then then when it was appropriate, I was like, well, how many times a week are you in the backyard practicing? Do you feel like, what are the things that you could do to improve your skill? Because not every disappointment is an injustice,
right.
like,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so, I ask them questions, or if it's something that happens in the friendship group, I ask questions so that they can identify, hey, did I have a part to play in this? Is this something that they're going through? Is this something that, you're going through? And trying to get them to come to their own realizations about this disappointment through asking them questions instead of feeding them. Well, they shouldn't have done that. And that coach, I'm going to give her an earful. Well, no, have you spent the time practicing and doing what, you feel it needs to be done to make this team, so there's questions that we can walk them through, and we can even ask them questions like with the gymnastics and say, well, I'm sorry that this is not, you're not participating in this, but what are some other things that you can do that bring you joy in this season? Like pulling out of them, allowing them to learn like critical thinking. What do I need to do for myself? Self-awareness to solve this problem.
Right.
Definitely. Questions are,
I love that.
I feel like you can never lose with asking questions, honestly. It just gives them an opportunity to think through something.
Yeah. What are some of okay, so because I have all kinds of questions. I have 2 middle schoolers. They're full of disappointment. Like every time I ask them to do anything, like, oh, I have to take the trash out. Oh, I have to clean my room, Like, what are those questions? Like, what are your go-to questions, for example, when they don't get a thing that they want, or they are not able to make a team, or something like that? Like Elise, you mentioned getting parts and plays. Like, what's a question that you can pose to them very generally that would be helpful, do you think?
Well, I think part of what you said, Kimberly, is a good question. And that is in some way really asking them about what did they do everything that they could? Legitimately, not a leading question, literally like, so do you feel like you brought your best to the table and you just didn't get the part? That's a way of having them think.
Yeah.
And their answer may be yes. Yeah, I did. I did everything I could. I rehearsed. I, had my line, whatever I had, it was ready to go. And I really think the director just doesn't like me or something like that.
Right.
That may be true.
Yeah.
You know,
And then you have a moment to encourage them too, like, hey, if you gave it your best, then you gave it your best. And that's
exactly.
fine. Like, you
Exactly.
can keep doing it if it's something you're really still passionate about. You can keep working towards that,
Yeah.
or you can try something else, you know?
Yeah. And like one of my daughters, I remember she became part of the crew.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Like
know?
rowing.
No, the crew of the play.
Oh, like stage crew.
Stage crew. Thank you.
Got it. Yep.
They did
I'll
crew. They
I'll
did
fill in the
crew
blanks.
too, but stage,
Got it.
that's what she did for
Yeah.
one of the plays before she actually broke into the acting. And that was kind of her. Oh, she had actually tried out and didn't get
Yeah.
into something. And she joined stage crew. And I'm like, that's brilliant, because
Right.
you're not saying just because I didn't get the part I wanted, I'm not going to be part of this. You're saying
Right.
I'm interested in theater. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to do what I can to get in there. And I thought that was a great,
A great response. Yeah,
yeah,
I think so.
yeah. Again,
Did you
empowering
have anything
yourself.
else to add? Like, do you have any? I'm writing these down. These are my notes. Like, go into my notebook right this minute.
Or when I think about like friendships and things that they go through socially,
Yeah.
I've definitely had to coach through some of those situations where it's like, well, so-and-so didn't include me, or so-and-so's hanging out with, so-and-so a whole bunch. And I just
Right.
start to ask questions like, well, what's going on with her at home right now? And then maybe come to find out like she's struggling at home, or,
Yeah.
oh, wow, like what do you think, why do you think they're spending so much time together? And these could be, these are dicey questions that could go either way.
Right.
It could be
Be
mean
prepared.
girls. It could be mean girls that are not
Yeah.
including them. But I would say occasionally enough that it's worth having the conversation is that they just don't have a class together anymore. And that's why you're not connecting. So,
Yeah.
okay, so what are the things that you can do? You're going to have to work a little bit harder in order to maintain this connection with her. What are some of the things that you like to do together that you can invite her to come over? Right. And all of a sudden, it's not about the thing they thought it was about. And we're exploring, like, how do we maintain this friendship? What do you think? Do you feel like something went wrong, or do you just not see her as much? Like, what can we, and these questions will help them solve the problem and then potentially put a plan in place. And so whether it's, okay, mom, I'm going to start to, get out in the backyard 4 days a week and I'm going to practice my dribbles, or I'm going to reach out to my friend that I don't have classes with anymore and I miss a lot and ask her if she wants to go to a movie. Like, what can we do to move past that disappointment? And sometimes it is a disappointment that we can't move past. It just is what it is, and we have to feel those emotions. But I'd say many times how, we can decide how we're going to respond to those disappointments. And then, like, what is the plan? What comes next? Because I think that, everything doesn't have a solution per se,
Right.
but we don't want to stay stuck either. We don't want to give up, and we don't want to stay stuck. And when we don't know what comes next, again, I'm always going to preface it, but there are going to be times when there is nothing to do next. But when we don't feel like we have a next and we don't know what to do, it can feel hopeless. And we don't want our kids to get stuck in hopelessness, because then they're not going to take risks. They're not going to go for it again. They're not going to, dust themselves off. And they're going to become uncomfortable with their feelings, and they're going to start to avoid anything that makes them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, so true. I thought as you were talking, and it's kind of like, the word tells us to like take captive every thought, right?
Yeah.
And this idea of sort of exchanging it for the promises of God, exchanging these toxic thoughts and whatever for something that God says. And I was prepping for this and reading this article, and it's like, just because you lost doesn't make you a loser.
Yeah.
Just because you failed
Yeah.
doesn't make you a failure.
Yeah.
And so it's changing the language of how our kids are actually even speaking about the circumstance.
Yeah.
And like, I love, at least what you're telling me, getting them to talk about like how they approached it, like did they do their best, all that kind of thing. Did they, in regards to the friendships, like, well, did you reach out to them, like, and sometimes we have this expectation, right? We're setting these expectations that our friends are going to be the same communicators and have the same style that we have, and they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind
That's
of,
true.
helping them replace, oh, my friend doesn't like me, or they're throwing shade my direction, right? For no, they're just introverted, and they
Yeah.
need a little they need more prompting.
Yeah.
So it's this find and replace these toxic
Yeah.
thoughts, these debilitating thoughts, for life-giving thoughts, for hope-filled thoughts. And so that's kind of like
It's good.
what I try to do with my
Mhm.
kids. I mean, I don't, I fail a lot. That's why I'm asking all these questions with but I do think that that is a way that we can equip our kids. It's sort of like, get into their brains, like, how are you feeling about this?
Yeah.
And they'll
Yeah.
tell you, they'll say, oh, I feel like a loser because all my friends have abandoned me.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
And
I think unearthing some of the, what are you saying to yourself kind of stuff
yeah,
is great if you can do that.
Yes.
If you can get your kids to see that they're kind of sealing the deal. Like, I was having a conversation with my daughter the other day, and it was about meeting people in the city, and particularly guys. And she said something that was sort of like a closed door. And I said to her, honey, you've got to change that language. You've got to change your language to be more open to the possibility that even with COVID, people are meeting one another. She's in a new city. It's not easy. Socially, it's a very difficult period. But still, if you say, this is never going to happen for me, or this always happens, I think it's really important to teach our kids that language is powerful.
Yeah. We just had this crazy discussion. I can't even believe I didn't think about it, but you just made me think of it. So my son is like an engineering brain. He's like totally nerdy, geeking out, whatever. And we were talking about movies last night as a family. And my husband mentioned to him, he goes, sometimes the movie makers actually have envisioned something that then ultimately came into existence. And so we had this conversation about how our thoughts and our words manifest our future. And and God did it in the word of God. Like, and he was my son, you could tell the wheels are like spinning, like, wait a minute, give me an example, So we gave him a couple of examples of like these technologies, like hover trains, I'm like, Truman, those exist. They use high powered magnets. The train actually hovers just above the track. And he's like, what? Like, his mind is blown about all this. He's like, they don't fly through the air. I'm like, well, not yet. But I just, these are the types of things that we can instill this encouragement and hope in our kids, right? If we can help them see a vision, see something beyond the I'm never going to meet someone,
the stuckness place.
Yeah, exactly. And say, well, you might meet someone differently. It may not be what you thought it was going to be. You're not going to go to like a bar and like, Mr. Handsome is going to be down the end, like, hey, how's it going?
Glad you drink. Yeah.
But you still might meet him at a friend's house. You just never know.
You just never know. And I think that's really important for our kids. I was also thinking, another thing is we can share what we've been through, as long as we don't, like when our kids are disappointed, going through these hard things, as long as we don't take over again what they're trying to share about themselves.
Express,
we can say, I had an experience like that at one point, and this is what happened for me. And they can be like, Oh, wow. That's a bummer. I didn't know that happened to you, so I think that's another
I love that.
way of helping them through disappointment, is to kind of go, yeah, this has happened to me too. It's
Yeah.
a form of empathy, I suppose, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think all stages, I mean, I'm trying to learn how to strategically share certain things and wait and hold off on others. But I think it's important. I mean, like, it's interesting. Like, my kids have no idea, like, I was a person before them. Like,
Yes.
recently,
Right. Right.
something happened with my daughter, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, are you mad at me?" And I'm like, "Ava, I was in college too.
Yeah.
Like, I've been there, done that. Like, I don't, there's nothing that you can tell me that's gonna make me feel like that's it. I'm done with you." Like, I just,
Yeah.
and it was harmless. And I mean, I'm glad we have the openness that we can talk about these things, but it almost breaks my heart that she would think that I know nothing of disappointment, or I know nothing of
Yeah.
choices that could have
Yeah.
been made differently. Like, yeah, of course I do,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
even from a young age, I probably sheltered them from that. I
Course.
probably waited a little too late to start to sort of share my stories. But how can we share our stories even when they're young in age appropriate ways, and say, yeah, I had a friend on the playground that didn't want to play with me. Well,
Mhm.
what did you do, mom? How did you feel? Make sure you tell them how you felt, right? I think that's important
Yeah.
to
Yep.
put that in there. But yeah, they need to know that we have some life experience. And we
Yeah.
learned a few things.
It is true that they are really, there's still things that I can tell my kids and they're like, really? You did that? Or that was your story? And I think it's true. They don't really know us, and we can help them to know us a little bit when we
Yeah.
share that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
But
my teenagers, they like a good story now.
sure.
Yeah.
Now they want to know the real deal. They're going to ask me questions. And
Well, I
My
think
kids ask my mom and my brother and my sister all the dirt. They want to get
yeah.
all the dirt on mom.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah. I mean,
I
it's interesting,
interrupted.
right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's because they only know one lens. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
And I
tell you, with my daughter, like, so, she was kind of in the same similar stage. Like, middle school for me was actually really, really rough. My parents separated. Like,
mm,
I was dealing with all of these emotions that I didn't even, I was dealing with puberty and all of that emotions and the
yeah.
waves of hormones. And then this, you know, divorce happening in my
Yeah.
home life. And so I didn't even realize, like, the expressions of my face or who I was as a person were actually probably really hard to be friends with, at the
Mm,
time. But that the girls in my classes were really aggressive in the name calling and in the belittling and the,
oh,
we're it like purposefully excluding me from things. And so I always told my daughter, I said, that was like the dark ages for me. I said I'd really love to forget that those even happened, because it made me feel so valueless.
mm,
I not only didn't think that I was a good daughter, because, all this is happening with my family, I didn't think I was a good friend. And I said, here's the myth that and the lie that snuck in that season was
mm,
that boys are the only people that are going to place value on me.
mhm.
And really at that time, like, all my friends were guys,
yeah.
because I was a pretty girl and I had blossomed early and la la la, like all the things that I now know looking back. I'm like, yeah, that's why they wanted to be friends with me. Like, oh God, it was just so obvious, you know. And but that lie I took a hold of, and then throughout my adult life, you know, the way that I sought attention from men and even manipulated them to a certain degree, like, it was just not a good situation. So I shared openly with her, this is what I struggled with. Like, sometimes girls are just mean, but that doesn't mean that you're not valuable, that
Yeah.
you're not a good friend. And, like, can you continue being a good friend? And
Yeah.
I said, they will come around.
Hmm.
So, it's hard being transparent with your kids.
Yeah, it can be really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I know we've talked a lot about a lot of big stuff in this episode. And I know that we have older kids, and so we can talk about this, but I just want to encourage anybody who's listening, if they have young kids, that resiliency and these habits, you can start using these very young, disappointment that they didn't get the toy they wanted, or that it's not really a big kid problem, but my son will get disappointed when he doesn't get the meal he wanted, right? But again, it's an opportunity to be like, I know you're disappointed. What would you like me to put on the menu this week? Can you put together a list of the ingredients we need, right? So then I take him through those steps. It's a very small thing. We're not crying over it, but I empathize. I ask some questions. We put together a plan, and then you can get the meal you
Move
want,
on.
but like ruining our night because you didn't get what you wanted, So, I mean, these things, these lessons, they don't need to be big life altering lessons. Like, that's the little things, right? I think this is my new favorite scripture about the little foxes. It's those little things that we can start training our kids in, and we can make it a part of our family culture that we get disappointed, but it doesn't keep us stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. And that's such a good reminder, the little like toddlers and stuff, we can start to have them build the coping mechanisms that they're not always going to get what they want then. And if you are listening right now, if you do that, if you are consistent in that, then when they are teenagers and they do start asking for cars and big things start happening, it's not as big a tantrum or I'm running away from you because you don't do what I want you to. It's not as big of a thing. It's more like, okay, well, let's find out what my second best option is.
Maybe I need to get a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, Kimberly, preach.
Yeah, I think it's important. All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
Well, I would just say, Jess, that I really agree with that. If you do this kind of training at a very young age, we're talking 2 years old, kids are negotiators, and they're also emotionally manipulative. I mean, they just talk. So
she said it out loud, folks. Did you hear it? It's true.
if we can know that, then we can not give in to everything and allow them their disappointment, their feelings about it, help them identify it, and we will alleviate some of the agony. When you add a 1 to the 2, 12, 13,
yes.
So yeah, I think that's good.
And I'm going to say one last thing that's probably another whole podcast episode, but us as parents, understanding this concept ourselves goes a long way, because there have been times when I have been disappointed with with how my kids have responded to me, or disappointed with not being able to do what I wanted to do or get them to behave the way I want them to behave. And so now I'm making poor decisions out of that place. And so I need to learn to be disappointed. I need to learn that, sure, I just offered my daughter a spa day and she would rather be with her friends. Like,
yep.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes. It's funny too. I sometimes say, one of my daughters was home. My older daughters were home, actually, a couple of them during the pandemic. And one of them said to me, "You always say you're disappointed." Well, first of all, I didn't know that that's what I said. And second of all, she was equating being disappointed about something with being disappointed in her. And that was a differentiation that I really was like, I need to make this very clear. I am not disappointed in you. I am disappointed about a certain circumstance that I didn't see turn out the way I wanted, just like what you said, really. Sometimes we have to, work on our own little disappointment reactions.
Yeah. So that we can continue to love them, and that they can know what they can expect from us.
It's not based on whether or not they've pleased us. Yeah.
All right.
Okie dokie.
I like this. I'm going to take some notes and make sure I continue to apply these things, because
I know
it's easy for these kiddos to get disappointed.
This was a loaded one, actually.
Yeah, well, thank you, ladies. You definitely inspired me and equipped me with more things to do, but in a positive way. I think it's good. Thank you.
Yeah. No, this is a good conversation. It's definitely worth having. Because I don't think it benefits our kids to keep them and protect them from disappointment.
Yeah.
No, and
agreed.
we didn't say this, but people really say things sometimes that I'm just like, I don't want my child to have to go through X, Y, and Z. And I'm kind of like, but that's life. X, Y, and Z is part of life. Like you can't, some of the friendship stuff is horrific,
Yep.
but you can't go in and start talking to those kids and tell them to be nicer to your child. You just can't. It would be nice if you could. And it would be, and if you want to do something about like a larger picture, how do we get these kids to be kinder to one another amongst mothers or whatever? But like, we can't alleviate every disappointment. We can't provide whatever it takes to avoid the disappointment. We just can't. That's not, it doesn't serve them.
Yeah. Yeah. We couldn't even do it if we tried.
Nope. Okay.
Alrighty. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
This was
you.
amazing.
Thank you, everyone.
God bless us, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.